Hey guys, Jake Carlson here, host of the Modern Leadership Podcast. Are you ready to focus on amplifying your leadership superpowers? Let's go. Good morning, my friends and fellow elite achievers. Welcome to Modern Leadership, the podcast where each week we sit down with authors, entrepreneurs, and leaders to explore their journey, diving into the ups, their downs, and ultimately the lessons they learned along the way. Our goal, of course, is to show that everything is figure-outable. Today's guest expert is Shaan Patel. Check out this bio. Shaan closed a deal on Shark Tank with billionaire Mark Cuban for an investment in his company, Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers SAT and ACT courses based on Shaan's methods to raise his own SAT score from average to perfect, a feat only achieved by 0.02% of all high school students. His life completely changed because of this. He was admitted into prestigious universities, received $250 million in scholarship offers, and even met the president. Shaan eventually went on to receive a B.A. in biology from the University of Southern California on a full-ride scholarship, a medical degree from the University of Southern California, and an M.B.A. from Yale University. He is currently a dermatology resident physician at Temple University and continues to act as the president of Prep Expert. Shaan, I need to take a breath. Wow, it is so great to have you with us. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Jake, for the very flattering introduction. The one thing I will say is I didn't win $250 million in scholarships. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I won $250,000. Yeah, I'm just joking. But yeah, I wish it was $250 million.
Well, I don't know where I got that typo, but it sounded like a very good amount. I didn't suspect that you accepted them all. I just figured you applied to every university in the United States and maybe abroad.
No, it was still quite nice to have 250,000 even because I didn't have to pay for tuition, books, housing, food. But yeah, 250 million would have been really nice.
Very, very nice. Well, you know, I love this concept, this topic, this idea, this prep expert. I've got a freshman in high school, and we sat down before this interview today, and I told her who was coming on the show. And I told her about the Shark Tank, and I told her about Mark Cuban, and I told her about the investment. I even told her about your company's growth since going on Shark Tank. And to be honest with you, all she cared about is that you were an average student that got a perfect score on the SAT. And how do we do that? And I love that part of the story. I didn't talk about it in your bio. So give us a little background of how you grew up, your history, and then ended up being this, perfect score on the SAT.
Yeah, exactly. So, I had never planned to be sort of this test prep entrepreneur or anything like that. I was just sort of an average student who grew up in Las Vegas. And, Las Vegas actually has one of the worst school districts in the nation. And so we had like a 40% dropout rate. And, when I went to take my first SAT, I only got around average. And that was pretty depressing because, like many other students, I was a really good student, but I just wasn't good at test taking. And so I locked myself in the library between my junior and senior year of high school. And I eventually was able to raise my SAT score from average to perfect, something that only 0.02% of all students achieve. And that totally changed my life. I mean, I got those $250,000 in college scholarships. I got into amazing universities. I even got to meet the president of the United States. And everyone says, oh, you met Barack Obama. I'm not that young. I met George Bush. And, it was completely life-changing for me. And that was incredible. And that's really when I started to get the idea that I wanted to help other young students change their lives by changing their scores.
Yeah. And so take us back now. So you get this great score, you go on and do some schooling. And then I know you had a day job. You built this Prep Expert as kind of your side hustle. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I have always been either in school or now I'm working in residency. And during all of that, through college, through medical school, through business school, through residency, I started and I have continued to run my business. And that's something that I'm really proud of achieving because I think a lot of people who are employed dream of starting a business. And, on Shark Tank, even all the sharks will tell you, you've got to put 100% into it, and you can't do it while having a job. And I think hopefully I can serve as inspiration to some of those that would like to start their side business or side hustle without quitting their full-time day job.
Well, one of the things that happened to you when you were on Shark Tank is they didn't invest in your company per se. I mean, yeah, ultimately they did, but they invested in something else. And I think that's most important for our audience to hear. So what did Mark Cuban invest in?
Yeah, I had the ultimate compliment from Mark Cuban, which was he was interested in the business because it was a good business, it was profitable, it was growing. But what he was more interested in was me. He really talked about his investment in the business was really an investment in me. And he used the word acqui-hire. And what acqui-hire means is really to hire not really the company, but really their talent. So that was a huge compliment coming from a billionaire like Mark Cuban, that he saw a lot of potential in me. He thought that Prep Expert would not only be a successful company, but it would just be my first of many successful companies. And he said that, he wanted to sort of be the godfather to all of my companies and would love to be partner and investor in future companies as well as Prep Expert. And I mean, I don't think there's a better compliment any entrepreneur can get than that by Mark Cuban.
And as you look in the rear view, and hindsight being 2020 as it is, can you put your finger on what he saw in you that made you stand out as an individual, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, that your business was going to be successful? What did you personally bring to the table?
It was interesting because when I first walked into the Shark Tank, I saw, as I was telling my story and I was sort of initially telling them about the business, Mark Cuban rolled his eyes. He looked totally uninterested. But I was in there for an hour and a half. I know only 15 minutes airs on television, but the actual pitch is an hour and a half, and they edit the 15 minutes that are most dramatic and entertaining to actually air on television. But during that hour and a half, I shared a lot of personal stories about my upbringing, growing up in a motel with humble beginnings, with a really hardworking father who was my role model, and working 80-hour work weeks to work on the business as well as school and get everything done. And I think what really connected with him is he saw a lot of himself in me. He saw a lot of my upbringing similar to his own. He's also sort of a rags to riches story with a very inspiring father, and he started telling me stories about his father and how his father had worked so hard in doing upholstery on cars. And I think that really connected, and it was really the sort of art of storytelling and telling him about my hard work and work ethic. And I think that really connected with Mark Cuban. Is like, he always says the one thing you can control is effort. And he saw all the effort after I sort of explained my story and how hard I've been working on the business and school and residency, et cetera. And I think that's what really made him invest in me.
The one thing you can control is effort. And I want the listeners to pull that out of this interview, because we may not all have grown up in a motel, or we may not all have fathers that were great role models when it came to like working hard and being dedicated and committed, but we can all impact our effort, and we can all raise the amount of effort that we're willing to put in and move forward. And that's what he saw in you. That's what you see in yourself. And now you've gone on. Now your company's worth quite a bit. Is it still your side hustle?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Is that, my company is my baby. It's everything to me. It's like, it's worth $20 million. And, we've done multiple millions of dollars in revenue over the years. And, to still call it my side hustle, I think would really be sort of a disservice to it, because it is everything. But I can't take credit for all of the success we've had. I have an amazing team that runs the day-to-day operations, 10 full-time employees and 20 instructors that really carry out amazing instructors based off the curriculum, that amazing classes for the SAT and the ACT based off the curriculum that I've written. And I think that's what makes Prep Expert so successful, is having a really incredible team. Now, I still work on a lot of the business strategy, the marketing for the business, and do like the management side. But it's really the team that I have to give full credit for all of the success, and I couldn't do it without them.
Now, I've got to tell you just a little story about when I graduated from law school and was studying for the bar. So, bar prep is a lot like ACT, SAT prep. I mean, it's a you've got a short window of time, and then boom, that one test means a lot to you. And I basically set a schedule that 6 a.m. I was going to be in the library and I was going to work 12 hours before I went home. 6 days a week. So I got there at 6 a.m. If I took a half hour lunch, I would leave by 6:30. I would do that 6 days a week, take one day of rest a week to kind of recharge. And I did that for the 7 weeks between graduation and taking the bar. Now, of course, I did very well on the bar, but now I look at this company that you've built and you've got like a 6 week training. In fact, I've been on the website with my daughter because, like I said, she's a freshman and this is something that's very important to us right now. What is the secret to getting better at these tests?
Yeah, what's so funny is your story sounds so similar to my own story of when I locked myself in a library and studied, my butt off for the SAT. And, the secret, I think, is really hard work. And what I mean by that is we're not selling magic with Prep Expert. We're selling incredible strategies. So it's 100 strategies that I put together that helps me get a perfect score in the SAT. And that's what I deliver to our students in the curriculum. But on top of that, we have incredible instructors who have all scored in the 99th percentile and have hundreds of hours of teaching experience. So we have masters teaching the material. But students need to put in the effort themselves. Like Mark Cuban says, the one thing that you can control is effort. So our 6 week class, they've got to come to all of the virtual classes that are twice a week for 3 hours. They've got to do their weekly practice exam. They've got to do the homework. They've got to put in the effort. And if they do that, we guarantee that they're going to improve their SAT score 200 points, that they're going to improve their ACT score 4 points, industry leading guarantees, because we have just put tens of thousands of students through this program and curriculum, and we know it works. But again, we can't force a student to do all of the work. You've got to put in the effort just like you would a student, as you would an entrepreneur.
I want to share an idea that I have and get your thoughts on this. So I said to my daughter, I would rather you spend 10 to 20 hours a week studying for the SAT, studying for the ACT, than working for $10, $12 an hour at the Dairy Queen or somewhere else. And use that time basically as an investment in time to make that money back as scholarship. What do you think about that thought?
I love that. One of the biggest messages that I try to share with parents and students is that test prep is probably the best investment you can make for your student. And the reason I say that is, we had one student, they spent a few $100s on a class, but they got $1.4 million in scholarship offers. I got, like I said, $250,000 in scholarship offers. We have tons of these stories of students getting $10,000 a year, $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year. And the return on investment is incredible. So I think that test prep should be thought of less of as a tool to get you into college, because I do think that college admissions is very important, and I think going to a good school is important. But I also think that right now, student debt is a national crisis. It's $1.5 trillion aggregate across America. And to not be part of that problem, you can win scholarships with your test scores. And so, I applied for 100 scholarships my senior year of high school, and I won 20 of those because of my SAT score. And like I said, I didn't have to pay a dime for school. Everything was paid for. I was basically like a college athlete because of an SAT score. I was an athlete at the test. And so it's one of the greatest investments you can make in your child that will pay off tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars later.
All right, I'm going to put this on repeat and let my wife listen to it over and over again as we move forward. But, Shaan, you have such an incredible background as an entrepreneur. You have an incredible background as a doctor and what you're doing, but you're also a published author and a successful author. So you wrote this book, Self-Made Success, 48 Secret Strategies to Live Happier, Healthier, and Wealthier. I've got a copy of it right here. I've been flipping through it for the past couple of days. It's a tremendous book, and I want to switch gears just for a bit and talk about some of these secret strategies to live happier, healthier, and wealthier. Sound like a plan?
Absolutely. Yeah. My inspiration to write the book actually was Mark Cuban, in Shark Tank. This didn't air on television, but he told me, I see a young Tony Robbins. And when he told me that, it was really inspiring because I'm a huge fan of Tony Robbins and just everything in self-help. And I'm all about improving yourself. And so that's what inspired me to write Self-Made Success, to share some of the strategies that I've learned over my years that have helped me become a better entrepreneur, a better student, and even a better person.
Well, one of the things I thought I read is that if you didn't have a book, you wouldn't have made it on the show. So, how does that work?
Yeah, that was really interesting. So that was actually due to one of my other books. It was a SAT prep book. My first book ever was published by McGraw-Hill, the world's largest education publisher. Went #1 on Amazon for SAT prep, sold tens of thousands of copies. I was really lucky to get that publishing deal. But what was so interesting was when I went to the casting call audition for Shark Tank to give my 1 minute pitch on as to why I should be on Shark Tank and why they should choose me. I was standing in line with 500 other entrepreneurs in New York and to give this 1 minute pitch. And I remember the casting call producer, while I was giving my pitch, his face was totally stone cold. Like he was not into my pitch at all. I was talking about how many students we'd helped, that we'd been in the New York Times, Business Insider. Didn't care. But it wasn't until the very end of the pitch when I pulled out my SAT prep book from behind me and said, and I'm a published author, and I handed him the book, that his eyes totally lit up. He was just so impressed that I had written an SAT prep book, that my face was on the cover of this book, and he was just so excited. And, I really think that if I hadn't published that book and given it to him at that audition, I would have never made it on Shark Tank. So, to every entrepreneur out there, one of the best things you can do for your business is become an expert in your field by writing a book and publishing it.
Yeah, and was it a grind? I mean, that first book, to put it together, it sounds very academic. I mean, was it a difficult struggle for you to put the time and effort into getting a book that was quality that people could read?
Oh my God. Writing the first book was the hardest book ever. I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd written things before, but I'd never written a book. And it's similar to our stories of the LSAT and the SAT is I would go to the library from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., take that half an hour lunch. And I counted 60 days straight to get that book done at the end. And it was exhausting. I wanted to cry some days because I didn't think I would be able to meet the deadline for McGraw-Hill. And I was like, I'm going to let them down. But luckily, if you put in enough effort, like, again, we're going back to effort, great things can be produced and good outcomes can come.
Yeah, and that should be the theme of this episode, right? I mean, everything is figure outable through continued effort. And I love this idea of getting the momentum going, starting down a path. You wrote a book not expecting to use that book to get onto Shark Tank, but it led to that opportunity, which led to another opportunity, which led to, where you're at today is all a combination of the events that happened prior to this day in your life. And that's so important to understand. So let's take a look at your current book, this Self-Made Success, 48 Secrets, Strategies to Live Happier, Healthier, and Wealthier. And let's dissect like 2 or 3 of the strategies for the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the most important strategies for entrepreneurs is do what you know. Warren Buffett is famous for, probably the most famous investor ever. And, he is a successful investor because he stays within the realms of what he knows. He often says he won't invest in anything that he doesn't know or understand. And this could not be truer when it comes to entrepreneurship. I often have entrepreneurs ask me, what business should I start? And they start, rambling off all these buzzwords, cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, virtual reality. And the funny thing is they have no idea about anything in these industries. And that's not the way you start a business. If you want to start a business in one of these industries, great, but you have to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours learning about that industry or about that business or topic. The only way you're going to be a successful entrepreneur and a successful business is to have deep knowledge of a particular topic. You'll have an immediate competitive advantage. Malcolm Gladwell talks about putting in 10,000 hours to become an absolute master at any craft. And, I think one of the reasons that I've done so well with my SAT prep business is I really spent hundreds, if not thousands, and probably 10,000 hours now working on between studying for the SAT, writing material for the SAT, and working on my company for the SAT. So all of that combined has really had significant impact in making me an expert, and doing what I know is a huge, huge advantage in terms of becoming a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you brought up Malcolm Gladwell, definitely an author that we talk about a lot on this podcast. Interestingly enough, did you know that 10,000 hours that he wrote about in that book was actually a misunderstanding of a different book that he read?
Interesting. No, I did not know that. I would love if you could tell me more about that, because I always talk about the 10,000 hours.
So do I. And I still think the 10,000 hour rule is applicable, but it came from a book written by Anders Ericsson. And Anders Ericsson's most popular book is Peak, but his first book that he wrote when he was a psychology student, grad student, talked about the 10,000 hour rule. And it wasn't as simple as just doing 10,000 hours. He talks about it as having, a combination of not just practice, but focused practice, intentional practice. And then when I had him on my podcast, Anders Ericsson, he talked about how Malcolm Gladwell kind of made it simplified what he was originally teaching of just saying, put in 10,000 hours. And he used the example that, a kid can spend 10,000 hours banging on the piano, will never get good at the piano unless he has a teacher, a coach, or somebody instructing him to intentionally practice and use those 10,000 hours in an intentional way. And then he went on to use the example that, if somebody just did one thing over and over again for 10,000 hours, but never evolved and developed and expanded his abilities, then it would make him so niche that he would be not as successful as somebody who not just spent 10,000 hours, but focused on how applicable those 10,000 hours were to the accomplishment, the goal that he was trying to seek. I thought it was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, 10,000 hours of focused practice is definitely going to yield you results compared to 10,000 hours of unfocused and distracted time.
So we'll go ahead and link that episode, the Anders Ericsson episode, up to the show notes so that you can grab hold of that and give it a listen if you want to review it. But to bring this back to these success strategies, I want our listeners, Shaan, to get an understanding of how you've set out this book with the 48 strategies, but you have 8 kind of categories with 6 strategies each. And those strategies the categories are universal, wealth, entrepreneurship, social, productivity, mental, marketing, and academic. And so we already talked about, if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, start with what you know or get to know what you want to start. What's another strategy that you use?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, another big strategy is, I am able to never trade time for money. And what I mean by that is, I talk about spending a lot of time, spending a lot of effort, putting in those 80-hour work weeks when I've needed to. But you can't use that as a sustainable strategy if you're looking to become wealthy or really generate a lot of revenue. Trading hours for dollars will never lead to significant wealth. You only have 8,760 hours in a year, and much of that time is spent sleeping. So you have to set up revenue streams that continue to produce income even when you sleep. Passive income is really the key to wealth. Approximately 70% of the world's billionaires have started their own businesses. And so starting a side hustle business is probably one of the most common ways to generate passive income. And one of the few of the ways that I think that entrepreneurs out there should start thinking about is, one is writing a book is a great way to generate passive income. You can sell your books at any time on Amazon, and they can generate you royalties and generate you a passive income. You can create YouTube videos and make money off the ad revenue. You can develop an online course. I mean, my company, Prep Expert, has SAT and ACT online courses that are both video-based and taught by instructors that I hire. And so I'm able to generate revenue without necessarily having to teach the courses myself either. And so, even starting a podcast like this, right? There's lots of ways to generate, one of the things I tell kid entrepreneurs is you can make money in your sleep. And this is what I'm talking about, is never trading time for money. And they love it. The kids, they just start jumping up and down when I tell them they can make money in their sleep. Like, they're just so excited about it. And passive income is the way to do it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with this. And this is something that, as you were talking about, the hairs on my arm stood up because I believe in this so fully. I do a lot of coaching with lawyers, and service-based industries are often trading time for money. And a lawyer could feel like they'll be more successful if they bill more hours or if they bill more per hour, but they're always going to be capped. And I don't care if you're billing at $1,000 an hour, you're still capped at 168 hours a week. But there are so many people out there willing to trade their time for your money. And if you're willing to go out there and hire people that will work while you're, whether it's sleeping or getting ready for the day or doing a podcast interview or whatever you're doing, there's always somebody willing to trade their time for money. And that's how you can generate money as an entrepreneur.
Exactly. That's the real key to wealth. And I hope that's one of the big takeaways that people get from this.
Well, we have time for one more strategy before we let them go and tell them to pick up a copy of this book and read it for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another really big one that I love is that, you need to realize that $1,000,000 ideas are easy. And what I mean by that is, everyone can have $1,000,000 idea. What's not easy is the execution, right? So one of the reasons that Shark Tank is so popular is that when you watch an episode of Shark Tank, or when a viewer watches an episode of Shark Tank, people are like, that's such a simple idea, or like, I had that idea a long time ago. And it's like, the point that I want to share with people is that does not matter. Why does it not matter? Because ideas are abundant. They're everywhere. $1,000,000 ideas are everywhere. But what's really hard is all of that work that Shark Tank entrepreneur did prior to you seeing them on television to execute on that idea. So putting in that effort to execute on that idea is really what counts. And what's going to separate a successful entrepreneur from one that fails is execution on that $1,000,000 idea rather than just having the idea.
And Shaan, I want the listeners to know that there are 45 other ideas, other strategies that you've written in this book. We've only covered 3, and these are massively important. We started with start with what you know. Don't trade your time for money. And then we finished up with this idea that $1,000,000 ideas, they're a dime a dozen. They're out there everywhere. Anybody can have an idea. It's execution, it's effort, it's really going after it that makes all the difference. And that's just barely touching the surface of what you cover in this book. Such a wonderful book. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. Unfortunately, we don't have time to jump into any of the other strategies right now, which is fine, because they can pick them up themselves and read them. Let's shift now to the Learning from Leaders section, where we ask a few personal questions to go along with this business conversation. Sound okay?
I'm looking forward to it.
Very nice. All right, our first question then, is the book currently on your Kindle or bedside table? What are you reading these days?
Oh, the book that I love right now that I'm reading is Financial Freedom by Grant Sabier. It's an amazing book about personal finance. And, a lot of people think I'm a smart guy and, like I've done well entrepreneurially in business, but what I never took care of for a long time were my personal finances, and treating that like a business and really optimizing my investments, my saving strategies, my retirement accounts, etc. And Financial Freedom it's just the greatest book for someone who's looking to make sure that their personal finances are lining up to what they want to do for the long term and in their life, and really make sure that you're not losing out to inflation. And so I've just been learning so much, and people are probably like, well, you're an M.B.A., you're a business guy, you're an entrepreneur. And it's like, yeah, but I've also been so busy that I've kind of not been taking care of my personal finances the way I should have. And it's really been helping me organize.
And do I have to be an M.B.A. to read this book?
Not at all. In fact, nothing that I learned in business school is relevant to the book. It's, business school is really about becoming an executive at a multi-million or Fortune 500 company. This book is about taking care of your personal finances, whether you have $100 saved or you have $10 million saved.
And would it be a good book for young children, teenagers?
Absolutely, because it talks about the power of compound interest. I mean, for teenagers, it's so, so important. I mean, compound interest, if they start saving as a teen, it's just amazing how much earlier they'll be able to retire and how much more they'll have saved by the time they reach, the years of retirement for them.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Our second question then is your leadership superpower.
Listening. I want to say listening. And the reason I say that is as a CEO, as a founder, as a president of a company, one of my favorite things to do is to talk to my instructors, is to talk to my customer service people, to talk to my sales people. And I love listening to them because they're telling me the feedback from the customer, from the student, etc. And that's so, so important in a business. And that helps me make the right decisions rather than as a CEO making a decisions from the top down, not really listening to the people that are speaking to the customer on a day-to-day basis, because I'm not, and I'm letting them sort of guide sort of the decision making from the top. It is really listening to the people on the ground speaking to the customers.
Yeah, and I think we could do a whole episode just on listening. It's so vitally important as a leadership skill. So thank you for sharing that. Our next question then is your leadership philosophy, quote, or mantra, something that you live by.
Oh, yeah. I love Mark Cuban's quote, and it goes, work like there's someone working 24 hours a day to take it all away from you. And I love that quote because it goes back to just working and putting in so much effort, putting in so much more effort than anyone else ever would, because everything good that has ever happened to me, whether it's publishing a SAT book or publishing other books or starting my business or getting into dermatology residency, anything good that has ever happened has come through a tremendous amount of effort, time, and energy. And if you have that work philosophy that someone's going to take it all away, that someone's working 24 hours a day to take it all away from you, and you just have this philosophy that you're just going to spend those extra hours to work extra hard and you'll have amazing outcomes.
And you're not tricking yourself either, because there is somebody working 24 hours a day to take it away from you. We took our family and lived around the world. We spent 12 months in 12 countries, and we started in the Philippines. We went 6 months in Asia, 6 months in Europe. And I'm telling you, there are people out there hungry, desirous for your job, your opportunity to work, and they're willing to do it. So not only telling yourself that, but really knowing that that's the truth, that quote, somebody is trying to take it away from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredible, by the way. I had no idea you lived in 12 different countries for a year. That's something I'd love to do with my family one day.
Well, you know what? It wasn't as hard as a lot of people think. And it was a tremendous experience. We homeschooled the kids. We have 3 kids. They were 11, 8, and 5 at the time. And it was just a wonderful experience to let them see what else is out there, what opportunities abound.
Oh, I'm sure it's made them such great people because of that experience.
It has nothing to do with their parents. All right, my friend, our last question today is the book that you most often gift or recommend to friends, family, and colleagues.
It's going to be a Dale Carnegie book, and it's not How to Win Friends and Influence People. It is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. That book is absolutely amazing. I don't know why it's not more popular than How to Win Friends and Influence People, but How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. One of the biggest takeaways and messages that I love from it is to really focus on the present day, the present moment, and the power of now, and not worry about the past and not worry about the future, but worry only about the present time. And it has helped me focus so much more on the present moment and the today, and get rid of a lot of the anxiety that comes with being an entrepreneur or being a student, being, someone on social media even. Like, I don't necessarily have those same worries or anxiousness because I've read this book, and I recommend it to everyone because whether you know it or not, we are often worrying about the future or worried about the past.
Yeah, and anxiety and worry is becoming there's a lot of people struggling with this, from young people to older people. And so this is such a great recommendation. I love that you went a different direction from the how to win friends and influence people. Shaan, this has been a tremendous interview, one that I've looked forward to for many weeks as we've had it on the schedule, a book that I'm reading currently and really love. Before we let you go today, any last bit of advice, and how can we find out more about you? Pick up a copy of what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So for parents who have high school age children, definitely check out our online SAT and ACT courses at prepexpert.com. And for entrepreneurs, business folks, and people that are just looking to improve their lives, check out my book, Self-Made Success: 48 Secret Strategies to Live Happier, Healthier, and Wealthier on Amazon.
And we're going to link all of that up on the show notes so they have one spot to go and click on and get all of that stuff. Shaan, you're a tremendous guest, a great expert. Thank you for spending time with us today. You are indeed a modern leader.
Thanks so much, Jake. It's been so much fun.
One of my favorite episodes of the year, and not just because I have a freshman in high school that is studying for the ACT, but really because of the background and experience that Shaan brought to the table. This idea that working hard is required to be successful. It's not just making an investment and making millions of dollars. It's putting in time, it's putting in effort, it's understanding, it's being an expert in order to gain the rewards of your efforts. And I love this conversation of 48 strategies, secret strategies to be happier, healthier, and wealthier. Of course, everything is on the show notes. Everything can be found at jakeacarlson.com/ML150, 150 episodes in the book. And until next week, I want to wish you the very best of days, an even better life, and I hope that we proved everything is figure-outable. See you next week. Thanks for listening to the Modern Leadership Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Speaker Jake, on Twitter at Jake A. Carlson, and of course the website, jakeacarlson.com. See you there.